if we lose our connection to technology? And that's one of the questions I'm going to ask Michael Garfield, who's going to be our guest today. We have a few guests that we're going to be seeing today on The Whole Truth About Love and Money. Michael Garfield is one of them, and he is definitely a futurist. A lot of what he's talking about is a little bit over my head. I'm going to be a little bit honest, but I'm going to try and keep up with him today. And he is going to be sharing, in his own words, about the co-evolution of humans and technology as a microcosm of the universal desire for intimacy. All right, Michael, I see that you're here from Wyoming. Welcome.
I'm not actually. You got me?
I got ya, yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm not actually in from Wyoming. This is a Google number.
Oh, all right. You just picked Wyoming because
My
Wyoming's
email
cool.
account.
Got it. All right. Well, where?
Yeah, and this actually,
Yeah.
it's a nice, tidy lead-in to our the conversation as you framed it, because I'm calling you from my laptop.
Nice. You're calling from the
And
laptop technology.
and it's funny because I sit in front of this thing for about on a bad day, probably 10 or 12 hours, and it's my I'm not saying anything new when I talk about this computer as a part of myself, an
Yeah.
extension of my sensory relationship to other people all over the planet.
Yeah.
I proposed to my girlfriend on Friday,
Oh.
and this is we're talking about humankind, technology, and intimacy. Um, I flew out to Colorado and proposed to her from my roommate's bedroom on Skype. She didn't realize that I was in town. So,
Wow.
so when she said yes, I came downstairs and it blew her mind. And the whole truth of it, I suppose, is that there is this kind of strange paradoxical relationship between our desire for intimacy and this sort of how our own existence as social beings is sort of reflecting a trend in evolution to connect the various parts, to have single-celled organisms come together as informed teams and create an animal, and to have these animals come together and form teams and create, these social units, and to have these social units come together and create this globe encircling sociocultural matrix. But then on the other hand, the fact that we're doing this through mediaries, that the media, the information technology is also, as it's bringing us together, it's also in many ways, compounding and intensifying this desperate desire for communication, because it's keeping us all sort of at arm's length from one another at the same time. So,
Yeah. So, first of all, let me interrupt you for a minute and say congratulations! Woohoo! You're getting married. That's super exciting. And so, is she going to move to Austin, or that's where you are, Austin, right?
Yeah, and she may.
So, otherwise, you can use technology and yeah. So she's in Colorado. You're in Austin. And you're using technology to facilitate the long distance relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the kind of thing that I don't think would have worked so well when we had started dating 7 years ago. It would have been a much more difficult situation.
Yeah. Yeah, Craig and I, as you might know, are also in a long distance relationship, and yeah, I feel really super challenged about it. We're going to be talking about that more in the Love and Relationship Hour this hour. But before we get there, I just, with all of the technology glitches that we have going on right now, and they just seem to be like compounding. I'm wondering, what you see. Um, Here's what happens for me. A major fear comes in that the technology is going to fail on us. That as whatever thing is going to happen in the world happens, that somehow it's going to involve a cutoff of this technology. And all of a sudden, all these connections that we've been creating globally, all of us are going to be cut off. And what do we do then? And does that enter your mind? Do you think about that? Or you just say, oh, we don't need to think about that. There's nothing we can do about it?
Yeah, it's been a serious concern of mine for the last few years. There was a report published by the National Academy of Sciences in corroboration with the European Space Agency back in 2009, and they published this roughly 150-page briefing on space weather and solar storms and the electrical grid. And what they said basically was that our grid is set up in a very fragile way. It's hyper connected. There's no redundancy. There are no power surge protectors built into it. And given a sufficiently large solar event, like the Carrington event, which was a solar storm in 1859 that knocked out our entire telegraph grid temporarily, and people were reading their newspapers at midnight by the aurora borealis in Florida.
Wow.
And it was, they said if an event like this were to occur today, it would basically knock out the entire electrical infrastructure of the northern hemisphere. And then you've got a serious problem, because then you've got, auxiliary generators in the hospitals only last for 72 hours. So everyone who's on life support has got 3 days.
Wow.
And then if we want to repair, the system is set up in such a way that if we have regional outages, then we send trucks in to repair it. We send in these teams of experts, but it might take a team of experts, 2 weeks to repair a blown transformer, and that means that you'd be looking at, something approximating the Stone Age in the United States for the next 20 years or so.
Wow.
So this has been, a really serious thing, because there have been people going around basically urging some sort of mass, federal push to make the relatively cheap insurance move of installing surge protectors in our power stations. But it's really hard to convince people that they need to buy space insurance. So.
Well, and what would space insurance do?
I mean, basically, what I mean is simply that, to take the precautionary measures, that in the event that we have these 1 in 100-year or 1 in 1,000-year event, that the way that it was explained is like it would cost a couple $1 million to install surge protectors, all across the United States, and it would cost a couple $1 trillion to recover from a solar catastrophe.
Right. It seems like a couple $1 million is nothing in the scheme of like our complete communication network, and like we're spending far more than that on wars. It's crazy. So.
Right. But that's just it. Is that there's other recent psychological research that shows that our ability to calculate risk is actually one of the weakest parts of human thought. That's something that we're just terrible at. And that's one reason that it's actually good that we're co-evolving with our technology, because we're able to take a step back and look at these things from a more objective statistical view. And so, we have, humans have never been good at risk analysis. And so, you've talked about, we tend to blow small things up out of proportion and allow them to consume us, but at the same time, we also take very serious issues, and they're kind of just beyond our scale, our ability to like comprehend them, so we ignore them completely, so. But at any rate, in terms of like how I see this actually going down, I think that, while on the one hand, we do have, more to worry about now. Suddenly, we're worried about that kind of an event, like a solar event, in a way that it wouldn't have bothered anybody, 200 years ago. But at the same time, this is evidence of the fact that we ourselves have grown into this larger kind of extended body.
Yeah.
That we're aware of these things because, we have this global network of sensors that each of us can like reach into through our computers and explore, and Google Earth, it's now, and increasingly so, it's part of our, it's like a sixth sense. We have this what they call an extended sensorium. And I really think that if you look at it in terms of the field of cybernetics, which is all about living systems as feedback loops,
Mm-hmm.
and patterns of interactivity, that that this conversation is like a part of myself, and it's really, all of this technology has changed the way that I understand who I am, because we're social creatures, and the who we are is really just a theory based on our experience of other people's experience of us. So now that we're on Facebook and Twitter, and so much of our day is, just as it was in primitive tribal societies, composed of responding to people's oral communications. But we're dealing with this global network of oral communication now.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's really, there's the paranoid part, which is, oh God, a solar storm could take us out at any minute, but that's really just a scaling up of that earliest moment of self-awareness that we experienced at some point, hundreds of thousands of years ago, that first recognition of selfhood,
Uh-huh.
and then sudden awareness of our mortality. So
Yeah.
it's like the more aware we become of this extended self beyond our prior definitions of self, the more we're suddenly afraid that we're going to lose it.
Right.
We become aware of this new self to which we can die. So it's, in a way, it's a beautiful thing, that we have these new things to worry about, because it means that we have stepped into a deeper relationship with what it means to be alive and human.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you're talking about that, because in my former life, I was an estate planning lawyer, and I helped people confront their own mortality and to make plans for what would happen in the event of their death, and the end of their lives. And so I'm curious as to whether or not you, and specifically your fiance, for example, have made plans as to, okay, what happens if the communication lines go down? Where do we meet? What's the
Yeah.
rendezvous point? I know that's something that I'm frequently talking to Craig about, especially because he's really far away. He's across the entire country, and he'd have to get through Kansas to get here, and who knows what would be going on there. So, what's the plan if something happens? And have you guys even talked about it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I think that you're right in that there's a part of each of us that is kind of put at ease by simply having this discussion, whether or not it's actually a realistic plan. In the same way that drafting a living will can kind of put some insecurities and some anxieties out of your mind, and then you can kind of get on with your life. Um,
Right.
but there's another part of it too, which is that I feel that a lot of people think of Twitter as telepathy with training wheels, and a lot of
I've heard that.
people are using the kind of new age language to discuss the way that our information technology is intermediating our relationships. We talk about sending our thoughts to one another, in this much more transparent and immediate fashion. And so, in a sense, for me, part of what my own dynamic relationship with all of this has been is to, when you hear people talk about surfing the internet, for example, I have a friend, the artist Carrie Thompson, who told me that back around 2004, he decided that the best thing that he could do for himself was move to Costa Rica, because moment when the history starts moving so fast that it no longer makes any sense to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That are, and we're starting to see this in the sciences where the so-called big data is accumulating so much information that in order to make a scientific model about it, we need these supercomputers, and we don't. It basically turns like all of the life sciences, all of the geological sciences into something approximating meteorology, where we don't really understand what's going on. We can make sort of predictions, but we don't get it. And so everything's approaching this threshold of incomprehensibility. And Gary Thompson's response was to move to Costa Rica because he felt that learning to surf was the best possible thing he could do for himself.
I get it.
Learning to ride the accelerating change and learning to respond intuitively to an environment that no longer behaves according to our plans and our model is really important. So for me, it's the last couple of years, my plan has really been to move not beyond plans, because there's that part of the limbic system, that mammal brain that wants a sure thing, but to recognize that if I bring the neural networks of my entire body online, my heart and my intestinal system and all my skin, the brain is actually just one tiny part of this enormous network of intelligence, and to think with the whole body, to be really steeped in intuitive information, to get familiar with that, because it does take some time and some training to develop a sense of trust with respect to the kind of information that comes through, and what of it is worth listening to and what is not. But to recognize the difference between fearful impulse and a genuine truth of the nature of a situation. But for me, really, the plan that I've set out is, if things get really so dire that that we cannot communicate, for maybe solar storms take out all of our communication satellites, and no city is communicating to any other city, but the gas stations are still working, I'm driving back to Colorado.
All right.
I'm going to go get her.
Yeah.
But I mean, until that point, I really feel like what I've, rather than focus on particular disaster scenarios and how I'm going to handle them, like my uncle after 9/11 living in New York, he wanted to get a gas mask and a shotgun, and he wanted to take the security measures that were for the event that had already happened.
Right.
It's not really a response to the black swan event that nobody's actually going to predict. So getting to know touching base with yourself is probably the best dimension to cultivate in this kind of situation.
Well, what you're talking about, this training, this tapping into the intuitive full body really conversation, so that eventually we are able to communicate without Twitter, without Facebook, through this telepathic function, and like what I'm remembering as you're communicating is that each time that I journey with medicine, the awareness that I receive is that I'm in training, that we're that we're all in training, and that really, while I haven't been able to clearly articulate exactly what the training is about, you just did. Your articulation was it. It was like that's what we're in training for. I'm in training in those experiences to be able to connect to my whole body, so that I'm like beyond my mind, and my entire body is now learning to communicate with the world around me. And I'm learning to be able to trust my own instincts, my own intuition, as well as begin to see through my fear-based reactions, because my entire life I have been motivated by fear. I think that most of us have been conditioned to be motivated by fear, and it takes a relearning, and I feel like I'm just beginning to relearn how to be motivated towards as opposed to away from, which is I think a pretty big and necessary leap in consciousness for most of us, where we're no longer motivated by fear, but instead motivated by desire. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. To bring it kind of back into that, transpersonal frame of reference. For me, being trained in evolutionary biology, there's for a long time in the evolutionary sciences there was a bias, and there still is kind of in the public eye that evolution is about competition.
yeah,
And which is ultimately the survival drive. The fear of extinguishment. Which is Richard Dawkins' whole thing about selfish genes. Genes that are driven by these deterministic chemical processes to reproduce themselves, and like everything that we do is ultimately the old nut that reduces all of social ambition and the space shuttle and United Nations to basically sublimated sex drive.
yeah,
But then it's also true that you talk to information scientists like Rich Doyle, who just wrote a fabulous book called Darwin's Pharmacy, and he talks about how our coevolution with plants, in medicine plants that you find in the graves of shamans, dating back tens of thousands of years all over the world. The psychoactive plant use is ubiquitous in the human species. It varies from culture to culture, but one thing that seems true is that we have this strong, another one of our drives, equally strong, if not more so than the drive to survive, is the drive to be seduced, the drive to let down our boundaries into a greater and wholer self. For example, the biologist Lynn Margulis in the 70s came up with this theory that the nucleus and the other organelles inside each of our animal cells was once a free living creature, and that it became at some point what was a parasite became part of the single organism. And so there's this sense in which even in cases of competition, living in association with something, living together with something, eventually transforms that competitive relationship into this cooperative dynamic. And so there's this whole other drive, which is to lose oneself into this greater thing, to cooperate, to become part of a team,
yeah,
or to be, that's what patriotism is. That's
yeah,
why people get so emotionally attached to it.
yeah.
So it's
I think
really is.
it's what we want.
Yeah, I mean, so like, there's this sense that I too, over the last few years, have been retraining myself to understand that, even though I was raised with this fear mentality, that without making it kind of this new age law of attraction vibratory conversation, but speaking in a way that validates that whole angle, it's equally true that, or rather, it seems emotionally healthier to speak, for example, of my relationship as one that is founded in my love for this person, as opposed to my fear of being left alone or my desire to denounce everyone else. It's not like I'm with her because I'm because everyone else sucks.
Right.
It's not a move away from.
Yeah.
It's a building upon something that I value and that I treasure.
Yeah.
And that just seems like a much clearer way to make sure that what I am doing is motivated by emotions that I would prefer to be the constitutory emotions of this relationship.
Yeah. Michael,
I want it to be about love.
what brought you to Austin? Why did you move away from Boulder and the woman that you love and the community here to go to Austin? Was it a desire for community or something happening there that's not happening here in Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, my own, I have kind of a sacred geography way of viewing these things, the way that the land and the people interact, the way that culture evolves out of the landscape itself. And it just seems like Boulder is a very windy and rocky place. It's a very it's starkly beautiful. It has sharp seasons, and in Austin it's a huge limestone aquifer with natural springs running up from it. A forested hill country, and those two landscapes really affect my own kind of psychological expression. There really is, people like the institutions like the Heart Math Institute out in Santa Cruz have shown these real, very, strong science validating this sense that, when the weather changes, our emotions change.
Yeah.
And that there's this domain of astrology called Astro Cartography, which looks at the way that these various energetic influences affect us, are mapped over the whole planet, and they affect us as we travel. There are better or worse places for you as a person, and I always found it a little difficult to take root in Austin. If I were a tree there, I'd be
in Boulder,
slowly gnarled. In Boulder.
Uh-huh.
It'd be eking out kind of a harsh existence on the side of a rocky slope, as opposed to growing up into this font of culture and community. That's not to say that Boulder isn't a wonderful place to find culture and community, but I just found that Austin has done a lot more for me in terms of responding immediately to my investment. It seems to be glad to have me here. Not really hard to find a place to fit in.
I get it. I totally get it, because it's how I feel about Boulder. So it's interesting to hear you talk about Austin as that way for you. Whereas Boulder has been that way for me. I moved here 2 years ago from LA, and I get what you're talking about that, being in Austin and feeling like it wants you there. And that's how I feel about Boulder here for me. I feel like it wants me here. So I get it. I totally understand what you're talking about. And I see that we're probably going to need to wrap pretty soon, because Craig and I still need to talk about our pact and a few other things today.
Yeah.
But before we do, I want to ask you two questions. The first is, what sort of community practices are you engaged in that allow you to feel more connected to your local community beyond the technology, but really to those right around you? And then I also want to make sure to let people know where they can find you, and really, like, what are you up to in the world? Like, what is the gift that you have to give on an ongoing basis to the folks that are here and want more of you?
Yeah. Well, most of my communications, it seems, when they're not being mediated by Facebook, are being mediated through one or the other public appearances through the performance art.
Mm-hmm.
So I play music, spend a good deal of time, just chatting with the audience over the microphone for a lot of these shows.
Got it.
And making it more of a showcase, living room kind of a vibe. But then, which is a fantastic platform for this kind of freewheeling, loose associative performance philosophy, or what William Owen Thompson calls knowledge art. But I also spend a lot of time on an easel at other people's concerts, setting up to paint. And so I was trained as a scientific illustrator, and so I go to these shows and I paint kind of psychedelic fractal artwork, and people are it's a moth to flame scenario. People come up and talk, and it's really using it as a lure opens up this whole conversation about when I started doing this, I didn't realize what was going to happen, which was that it would people would come up to me and say, "Wow, I wish that I could be an artist." And so immediately it primes a conversation for and about personal empowerment and purpose and finding your place, finding a way to fit into a greater scheme, finding a way to live and actualize a vision, um, to move from a place of creativity, to recognize personal creativity as a microcosm of something that the whole world is doing, to see artwork as an expression of the evolutionary process. For me, all of these ideas got me out of this like 5-year funk that I was in
Mm.
when what I wanted to do as a grown up kind of fell apart, and suddenly I felt totally useless. And I had all of these talents, but I didn't really see how they were making me anything but like a fancy and utterly pointless bird in a cage,
Yeah.
and then to realize that there's this whole other thing, which is that we are, that we're sympathetic beings, and then to see someone else in this creative flow is really inspiring, and basically, to the extent that I do actually believe what I say about all of us being cells in the body of this planetary superorganism. Um, then it makes sense that I would broadcast a message of inspirational recruitment. Like, come on, you guys, let's do this. So that's for me the more I'm a networker and connector, and it's just the most delicious thing to find out that somebody needs something that someone else has in surplus,
Right.
and then to introduce them, or like to bring two people together that end up getting married, or
Yeah.
that's it's juicy.
It is. It is. So, people who want more of you, who want to connect to you so that they can experience
Yeah,
more of what you have to offer, it looks like can go to, well, first of all, can find you on both Twitter and Facebook at Michael Garfield. And then on your blog at michaelgarfield.blogspot.com. And I'm there right now, and you have all sorts of artwork, and uh, really, really great stuff here. I'm seeing that you have a pay what you want or download it all for free. Um, is
yeah,
this your music?
yeah. I do. Musically, I started out just playing acoustic guitar, and then it has gotten increasingly more bizarre and profound. The more that I integrate, percussive, like fretboard tapping techniques, live looping, and various electronic effects. And it's at a point now where what started out as singer-songwriter stuff is sort of this like one-man guitar orchestra, um, making electronic music on an acoustic instrument. And because all of those albums online are either really old studio albums or are live albums that I recorded on the road, it just felt right to release them as gifts.
That's
So
great.
you guys can go to michaelgarfield.net and grab a bunch of music for free that people say is really good for listening to while painting or writing or driving or making love or being a creative, full throated joie de vivre kind of person.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, Craig was letting me know that you play the acoustic guitar, but amplified electronically. You've got, you add in electronic sounds, loops, and all of these different things along with the acoustic guitar. So that's what you're talking about when you say it's gotten kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea is part and parcel to this discussion of technology and its coevolution with humankind. The idea that, the guitar, just like me, we have our iPhones and our laptops and our Bluetooth headset, and the guitar has its own cybernetic enhancement. So like by playing it through this huge rig of gear, I've turned the player, the instrument, the the hardware effects, the sound system, and then the audience into this single thing, this single vibratory event. And, to think of it in that way, to kind of, digest and re-examine those boundaries between self and other,
Yeah.
so it's, one guy, but it sounds like a whole group because each of us is actually internalizing our parents and our culture. And so it's kind of a play on that whole thing.
I love it. I think that's great, and I really would like to see you play live. I see here on the site that someone said that new words need to be invented for what you're playing. It's intimate and ecstatic, focused and raw. So I did see that you might be coming to do a show in Boulder. Will that be musical show, or are you going to be doing art
Yeah,
when you're here?
yeah.
Yeah, cool,
There's a 3-day event in April 19th to the 21st in Boulder, and
cool.
if people want more information about that, it's not quite public the whole festival yet, but there's a biweekly newsletter people can subscribe to on michaelgarfield.blogspot.com,
Great.
and that's new art and music every 2 weeks, and I'll be keeping people updated with information about this. What's going to be a very busy summer of festival appearances and
Awesome.
tour work. So
Great.
hopefully we can get out there and meet you in person finally after all
Yeah,
this time,
I know.
and all of your people, and hug some people and rock out.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us here. And for those of you that want more of Michael, you can find him at michaelgarfield.net as well as on Facebook and Twitter and lots of different places on the web. Michael, thank you. It's good to connect with you this way. And I look forward to connecting with you face to face soon as well and hearing your music and seeing your art in
Yeah.
person.
Thanks.